Afternoon, Jen.
Afternoon.
Afternoon, everybody. Oh, can't hear the voices in response.
All the cheers, the clapping.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm very, very hot. We've chosen to do this on the hottest day
Of the year so far.
probably. Yeah.
36 degrees last time I checked.
Oh God.
Which means it's only going to get warmer because we're still early on. Another couple of hours of heat, rising temperatures.
We've turned the fan off for the occasion.
Well, for the podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the occasion. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so a bit of an unusual one today, isn't it? Because we're not going to follow the usual format. We're going to throw it to the wind,
Yes.
and instead, well, there is not much wind actually, but instead, we're just going to talk about The Sinner, season 3. So, I should at this point out that if you haven't watched The Sinner season 3, stop listening.
Yeah.
Go and watch it, and then return with your thoughts and responses in however long it takes you to watch it. There will be loads of spoilers in this.
Yeah, we're not leaving anything. So.
We watched it quite recently. I have forgotten most of it, but that's just more about me. But I see, Jenny, you've done lots of.
I've got notes about the
research.
plot, so we can remember when things happened, because it is all a bit of a blur now.
Okay, so spoilers. Sinner season 3. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch it now.
Yeah.
So, right, I don't know, Jen. What's the first thing you want to say about it?
I've just got a little bit of background on it, in case people are listening to this thinking that they might not watch it and just want to hear about it, or
What
I don't know.
sort of madness is that?
That might happen. Some people listen to things about films that they just can't bother to watch.
Crazy.
Well, yeah. So this was originally commissioned as just a mini series for Netflix. It was only meant to be one series, 8 episodes, done. But it was so successful that they decided to change it into an anthology series, which means that each series is its own standalone story, and the one character running through it is Detective Harry Ambrose, who investigates crimes committed by unlikely culprits, and there's always far more to the story than meets the eye.
I must admit, what's his name, the actor?
Bill Pullman.
Bill Pullman, he's brilliant, but I must admit, after having watched season 1 of The Sinner,
Yes.
I thought that was it. I thought, well, that's a complete conclusion. There's nowhere else this can possibly go.
Yeah.
And so you do have to suspend that sense of reality that these events all happen in his neck of the woods
Yeah.
3 times over.
Yeah.
Although there is a bit of geographical movement for season 3, isn't there?
A little
He's
bit,
a bit
yeah.
further away.
Yeah. So he throws himself into these investigations. He is, well, in season 1 when we meet him, he's quite an interesting detective in the sense that we see a lot of his personal life, maybe more than we'd like to see.
He's got, from memory, he's got a bit of a fetish.
Yeah, he likes to be dominated by women. He visits, there's a woman that he actually visits for these purposes.
But he is married, and with his wife at the time.
Yes, he was. That's different by season 3. But yeah, he was married. I forgot about that actually. He was married. But yeah, it's a little bit weird seeing his personal life like that.
Pretty much all TV and film detectives are troubled.
Flawed in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His is a
That's
bit.
his.
His is a bit. Yeah. More pronounced.
Yeah. I can't actually remember like the breakdown of his marriage and whether that's to do with their relationship falling apart just generally, or if it's down to the job. Because I can imagine he throws himself into these cases.
It's an accumulation, isn't it? They were having trouble from the very beginning, and he was trying to. He was back. That's right. They'd separated. They'd got back together again, and he was
it was like a trial, wasn't it?
Giving it another go, but it was,
Yes.
doomed.
Yeah. But second and third season, I feel like much more of a focus on the case. There's still touches on his personal life because obviously you can't just see the cases that he's doing. You see him going home and interacting with family and stuff. He doesn't have friends really. We meet his co-workers, and even then not necessarily friends. He's got his boss who kind of understands or tries to understand his methods, and the fact that he really throws himself into these investigations.
He does dance to his own beat.
Oh yeah, he doesn't follow rules.
He is very successful.
He is, yes. ultimately he
successful
is.
at solving cases, not successful career-wise, because
No.
but he's not interested in that.
No, he takes on these obscure cases. The case we're going to talk about, everyone else is prepared to just throw it off as, oh, accident, done. He's the one that says there's more to it, I'm going to investigate.
So the premise is these, on the surface, cut and dried events. Like the first season, Jessica Biel, wasn't it? Who's
Yeah,
a
Jessica Biel, who
producer.
starred in it, she's now a producer for the show.
She, in the first season, am I right? She just stabbed someone to death on the beach.
Yes,
in front
unprovoked.
of
Everyone there,
Yeah.
including her fiance, husband,
Yeah.
boyfriend,
So
someone.
that's pretty cut and dry, innit, you know? But
Yes,
it didn't turn
but
out
he
like that.
insists on delving into her past. He realises he wants to know what the trigger was,
Yeah.
and he talks to her a lot and uncovers a lot from her childhood, her later teenage years, and
And it-
ultimately finds out why she did it. He never tries to say that she's innocent. She's not.
And it does make sense
Yeah.
what he uncovers.
Yeah,
And
he just wants to know why.
it's season 1 of The Sin. I mean, I can see maybe they were taking a bit of a chance with it, but it was brilliant.
Yeah,
And season 2 was brilliant.
yeah.
Season 3?
I still loved season 3. I think from watching it, we found more problems maybe with season 3 because of how committed Detective Harry Ambrose is to solve the investigation and do it in his own way, which puts himself and other people in danger. And it's not, there are definitely, as we go through the plot, there are questions that we have about certain characters and their actions, and certain things could have definitely been avoided if you follow protocol.
Yeah, I found it difficult to...
You really did, yes.
I found it difficult to believe what I was watching.
Yeah.
Whereas the first 2 seasons, I believed what was happening, as far-fetched as it may have been if you didn't have the context. Even with the context for this one, I thought, oh, please just fuck off. Sorry, excuse my language.
I think we can bleep that maybe.
That was my response to... I did enjoy
Yeah.
it because I love his character. He's good. I like Bill Pullman. He plays him
Bill
really well.
Pullman is
Very
great.
tortured soul. And I'm presuming, you know, what's the name of the other guy? The antagonist, if you like.
So Jamie Burns is played by Matt Bomer, who you know from White Collar, and he's also been in American Horror Story, which is where I'm guessing he's become quite popular
I
now.
thought you said he was in Glee.
He was only in one episode, I found out, so I just remember him from one episode. I thought he was in more, but apparently not. So American Horror Story, he's been in 2 seasons of that kind of recurring character, so that's where people might have seen him before. And White Collar, he's in every episode, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah. He's
Is he the main guy?
Well, there's 2 of them, but he's
He's one of them.
Yeah, and that's what ran for years.
Yeah.
And
so Jamie Burns is our...
And this is a very
suspect.
different role he's playing.
Well, yeah, he's on the wrong side of the law, I suppose. Yes.
But I've just found his character just... I think someone tweeted the phrase "utterly ridiculous," and I'd find it very difficult to disagree with that. And
True.
And that spoiled season 3. Now, look, I think there's a season 4 coming up.
There is, it's confirmed.
And I will watch it.
Oh, of course.
But it's got a claw back.
Yeah.
Not that it needs to prove anything to me. I'm sure they don't lie awake at night thinking that podcast that has 5 listeners.
5? Why have we gone down since last week?
Well, how many was it last week?
Like 10.
10.
We're
All
at
right,
least in
sorry.
double figures.
That podcast that has tens of listeners. We really need to make sure that they give this season 4 a positive review.
Yeah, we're paying our Netflix subscription
on the
to
basis
watch this.
of.
Amongst other shows. Other shows are available.
So right.
Yes.
Okay.
Other notable cast that I'm going to talk about is Chris Messina plays Nick Huz, who is Jamie's friend and ultimately is the reason that Harry Ambrose is investigating.
Well, he's an old college friend, isn't he? And he's out of his life for about 13 years or something, and he comes
suddenly
back.
turns up on the doorstep, much to Jamie's shock and dismay. Initially.
So we thought.
Well, he's shocked to see him there
at his house.
At his house.
Yes.
It transpires that, we'll talk about this, but it transpires that they have seen each other more recently.
As in those last few days.
Yes, and and Jamie had specifically told him, do not come to my house.
Talk us through their relationship in college that we learn through various flashbacks.
They are in I think it's a philosophy class that they meet in, because they talk about Nietzsche, and they talk about Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, which is being fascinated by the ideas of the goals that humankind can set for itself and the limitations that maybe we put on ourselves as humans. And in one of these flashbacks, Jamie is shown to be challenging something the professor says, and Nick jumps in and says something which actually agrees with what Jamie was talking about, and they form this friendship, and they seem to have a lot in common. They get on really well. It's
like two outsiders who found each other.
Yeah, and they feel very comfortable around each other, and this leads into Nick becoming quite controlling. And although this is a friendship, Jamie finds himself depending on Nick and following Nick in these outrageous things.
Well, their dynamic is off.
Yeah, it basically involves Nick wanting to push themselves to the limits and take more risks, and these often involve life-threatening situations. And Jamie eventually decides he needs to cut ties with Nick because it's become too much.
Well, if you've ever watched The Diceman, or read The Diceman...
which I have not.
What's his name, the author? I can't see it from here.
Luke something. Do I need to get up?
It's not ringing a bell. Anyway, The Diceman, where this middle-aged, bored, suburban living lawyer, I think, decides to shake things up, and he writes down 6 options of things to do, and he attributes each option to number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and throws a dice, and whatever it falls on, he does it. Now, he starts off with 5 tame options and 1
risky.
Yeah, and it escalates from there. It's a brilliant read. It's dark and twisted, and I wouldn't recommend reading it if you're a nice delicate flower. However, if on the other hand you're a thorny, prickly old sod like me, well then The Diceman would be right up your street. And in Sinner, he did the same thing.
Follows a very similar.
What do you call that thing?
It's a paper fortune teller.
There's another name.
There is a name for it. I couldn't find it though. Some people call it a whirlwind or something like that.
And it's like it's like
you put it on your fingers and
triangles
you count.
And squares and options.
Yes, and you pick a number and you open it up 1, then close it again. Open it up the other way 2. Open it up again 3, and you unfold the paper.
That's a lovely demonstration, Jenny.
I had to do it to myself to check what I was saying. And you lift the flap, and then you pick numbers initially, and then once you've settled on your numbers, you unfold a part of it, and something will be underneath. And normally when you're younger, you did things like it might tell you it was meant to be to tell your future, but it'd be something so tame, like you're going to have a puppy, or
2.5 children.
2.5, okay, maybe on yours, and Nick's obviously went much further, including arrows to show where they should be walking to, the direction they should be going in, and they'd find themselves on bridges or on edges of buildings, and if the arrow said
step
towards
forward
or down, that's what you were supposed to do. And it was all about that thrill. And Jamie cut ties with Nick.
Why did Jamie cut ties? What was their... Don't you remember what their ultimate dare was?
Well, because Nick wanted to kill.
No.
Oh, I don't remember this. It's not in the plot, so I don't know.
No, they dug the hole.
Oh, that thing. Yeah, they dug graves for each other, and they buried each other alive, and it was a trust game.
6 feet under, but had a tube.
Yeah, a hose that you could then breathe through, and it was a trust game, and after however many hours, the other person would take the other person out.
And the first time they did that, Nick obviously buried Jamie.
Yes.
But then whipped the breathing hose away from him, and Jamie was
terrified.
Yeah, and then back in the dorm, Jamie attacks his roommate in the university.
Yeah, I've forgotten that part.
And
happened.
that's why. And then at that point, then their relationship, because they were kicked out of college, their relationship ceased at that point. That's the reason their relationship ended.
Nick wanted to keep going further, and Jamie realised he he couldn't do that. He couldn't put himself at that risk.
So they led then separate lives, and
so they're living separate lives. Jamie becomes a history teacher at, I think it's a private girls' school, like very well established. He's married, and they're expecting their first child, and it looks idyllic. But then Nick shows up on the doorstep.
They've just moved to the. Jamie wanted to move out of the city because they're expecting a kid.
Yeah, thought it would be better for them.
Yeah. And so they're living, I don't know, about an hour outside of New York, is it?
Yeah, it's suburbia, isn't it, somewhere? I can't remember where. But we realise later on that Nick shows up on the doorstep, but that is prompted by Jamie calling him a few weeks earlier, and Jamie admits that he misses that risk in his life. His life has no meaning.
Boring.
It's mundane, yeah. He's got a steady job, he's got a relationship, and he wants something to shake things up again.
He feels nothing.
That's what he says, yes. He comments to Nick that he feels nothing. And Nick, obviously, is more than willing to take his partner back, and Jamie does not expect it to be the case that Nick turns up on the doorstep and Leela, his wife, just unknowingly invites him in because she's nice, and she says, oh, we'd love you to stay for dinner.
She's never met him before.
No, she's never met him, and Nick's asking quite prying questions. Oh, hasn't Jamie ever mentioned me? Has he told you about what he was like?
And we have no idea who he is at this point.
No, we really know
watching
nothing
it,
about
we know
him.
nothing. All this knowledge comes to us via flashback. I think Jamie recounting certain events to certain people, maybe the detective Ambrose in particular.
Yeah.
We learn about what actually happened.
But by the end of that this is just the first episode, by the end of the first episode, Jamie and Nick end up in the car together, and we see the car wreckage, and Nick is dead, and Jamie has survived the car crash. And this is where Ambrose comes in to investigate, and Harry is determined that there is more to this than meets the eye, because they go and look at the car wreckage and the handbrake's pulled on.
Well, before that, it's where the car crash takes place.
Yes, that's true. It's on a road leading up to...
Only one house.
Yes, Sonia Barzell's house, played by Jessica Hecht, who you might know from Friends. She played Susan, A Beautiful Day in the Neighbourhood, Breaking Bad. She's been in a lot. She lives there, very much isolated. She's an artist.
She's the only house at that road. So
she lives there, it's very secluded, and she claims that she's never known these men before. She's shown pictures and she says she doesn't know them, who they are, which she doesn't.
We don't necessarily. We're not sure about her
at that point, though.
But actually, she is.
She looks like a bit of a shifty character. It's the sort of character she plays quite well. She comes across as quite meek at times, and she can be quite bold. But we aren't sure whether she's really telling the truth. But she takes a great interest in the investigation.
Well, because she's genuinely worried that they were coming to kill her.
Yeah, she doesn't know why they'd be. Well. Yeah, she doesn't know why she'd be targeted of all people. So when Harry goes to look with someone else from the precinct, he goes to look at the car wreck, and he realises that the handbrake has been pulled, and obviously that would cause the accident, and there's blood in the car, which I don't think they'd noticed before. Well, no, it's on the wrong side.
The blood's on the stereo.
That's it, yeah.
And it's
there's
like,
blood.
Why have they turned the music on after they've
when someone's
crashed.
Bleeding, clearly. It's quite a gruesome death for Nick. He goes through the windshield of the car.
And they find the mobile phone, but it's completely clean of fingerprints. So there are a few
They find that near the crash site.
There are a few little question marks that each on their own might not raise too much of a red flag, but together it paints a picture of this. There's more to this than meets the eye.
Yeah. And at the end of the episode, in the flashback, we see that in the car, Jamie is begging Nick to turn the car around, because Nick says, no, this is where we're going, this is where we're heading. We still don't know why, but we see Jamie cause the crash because he doesn't want to do whatever Nick's planning. And once Jamie staggers out of the car, miraculously unharmed, I can't remember, but we said at the time Nick wasn't wearing his seatbelt.
Yes, here, Jamie
and we thought that Jamie had actually taken the seatbelt off, because that would be a good way to kill someone. And he basically just watches Nick bleeding, and it transpires that he just lets him die. He doesn't.
But they have a moment, because Jamie and Nick both are in the moment, and Nick
is the ultimate risk.
Nick is embracing his last moments alive.
Yes.
But that's not the end of Nick.
Oh no. So second episode comes around. Jamie is still maintaining his innocence. It's a tragic accident. He's lost his friend, albeit someone who's now turned up 15 years later.
But he's bloody glad he's got out of his life, because it was getting out of hand pretty quick.
Yeah. But Jamie continues to see visions of Nick wherever he goes. Very, very lifelike, vivid, very scary for him. Nick talks to him. Nick interacts with things. It's not nice for Jamie at all, but who can Jamie talk to?
At which point Jamie's baby's been born, and Nick even holds the baby.
That's in episode 3, yes.
Yeah, even holds the baby at some point.
Yeah, and Jamie completely freaks out, and Leela doesn't understand what's going on. This poor woman who's just given birth, and now her husband's just gone off the rails.
They think he's grieving.
They think he's genuinely like having panic. He's having panic attacks anyway, but they think that's happened because he's been in a tragic accident. He's watched someone die. How awful! But Harry Ambrose is not convinced. He believes that there's more to this. That Jamie and Nick have met up before that night more recently, and they find CCTV footage where they've been in a restaurant, and even from the footage you can see that Nick has a really negative control over Jamie. I can't remember if it's in this scene, but it's when he gets up.
He stabs his hand.
Oh yeah, he makes Jamie pick up a knife and drives the knife into his hand, and Ambrose doesn't know how he got that injury, but we see what happened. And he also goes up to a table where there's a couple, they're on their phones, and he drops their phones in their drinks just to start something, to cause a bit of a scene.
Well, he's fed up watching people not live.
Yeah, that's what he says, isn't it? And it's during this meal that Jamie admits he doesn't feel anything, and he wants Nick's help in a way. Meanwhile, the woman, Sonia, she discovers something on her property. She's got big land around her house.
The artist.
The artist, yes. What does she discover?
A grave.
Yeah, a grave freshly dug with a shovel and a jacket hung on the shovel. And again, Harry is convinced that Nick and Jamie had something to do with it, and Jamie denies all knowledge, says, no, that wasn't us, that's nothing, we were driving, we crashed, that's it.
But it was them.
It was them.
And they were digging a grave, and the argument in the car that led to the crash was down to Jamie's realisation that Nick actually has planned the murder of Sonia randomly, not because they know anything about her, just and they're going to take it one step further. The implication is that Nick has already killed people.
He admits it. He says
he wants
that he's
Jamie to feel that and experience that.
He admits. I don't remember if he says how many people he's killed, but even just the one.
Which is why he's happy for Jamie not to phone the ambulance when he's dying himself, because it's his last gift to Jamie. You're going to know now what it's like to let someone die.
And Jamie hopes that with Nick dying, all their secrets will die with Nick, and he can return to his normal life.
And his own illness.
Yes, he believes that he can be free, as it were. But we talk about Jamie and Nick met at college, and before they met, Jamie had a roommate who he later attacked, and he said his demeanour completely changed when he met Nick. He became a completely different person. And Jamie continues in the present day having panic attacks and really struggling, and he actually reaches out to Harry for help. He
sees in Harry a kindred tortured spirit.
Yes.
And vice versa.
And he thinks that Harry will actually take pity on him and help him. He doesn't think that...
Take Nick's place.
Well, yeah, maybe not at this point, but he just thinks that Harry will help him, and that it's not going to be in a law enforcement capacity. It's going to be, as you said, a kindred spirit, a friend. But when Harry takes him to be psychologically evaluated and Jamie's being asked questions, he worries that this is going to be a forced confession. Why are you feeling like this? What happened? And so he flees and drives, I don't know how far they are. He basically ends up in upstate New York. Or New York he ends up,
New York,
doesn't he? New York
downtown.
City. I was reading that, sorry.
Upstate.
In upstate New York was where the accident was.
Yeah.
Sorry. So then this leads to Harry tracking Jamie around New York. They've got a tracer on his phone, and...
We were going to read through the entire plot.
Yeah, because we've already jumped ahead. I'm trying to do things in order.
No, but that's the idea. It is jumpy. It's not in order in there.
Well, yes, I know, but there are certain events you have to do in order. Well, go on then.
What?
we're in New York. This was probably one of the episodes where I think we started having a lot of questions about why don't we just arrest this man? Because what happens when he gets to New York?
Well, okay.
It's
so,
obviously unhinged.
yeah, he ultimately kills someone. So I'll get straight to that.
Yes.
His that night in New York ends with him killing.
The medium.
Yeah, just so he met a student he used to teach, and she invited him to a house party in New York, and he eventually turned up there with Harry Ambrose. So at this point they caught up with him, but it was chaperoning him on the night because he wanted to make sure he didn't harm. He knew he was going to kill someone. Harry knew that what's his name? Jamie was going to kill someone, so he thought his logic was, if I stick with him, he can't kill someone. But of course he lost him twice. First time he lost him, he ended up car chasing him through New York street.
Running red lights as part of the thrill.
Which was an excuse. At this point he should have arrested him for that.
Yes,
but he didn't.
Definitely.
Instead what he did, which was just ridiculous, he drove him back to his house and then waited outside his house in a car where he promptly fell asleep because he took a few painkillers. Whilst he was asleep, Jamie buggered off back into that house party and killed someone who he took a dislike to earlier, and then came back home before Harry even woke up again.
Yeah. Well, the reason Jamie kills the medium is because Jamie has a reading, first of all, where the medium says you have someone who's very close to you, they're attached to you, and he refuses to go further, and Jamie is so intrigued by what he says that he goes back and he confronts the medium, and the medium again ends the session prematurely, but he starts saying things that Nick would have said, and he doesn't want to go into... What Jamie wants to know is, where is he going on this self-destructive path? What does he need to do? And when the medium doesn't give him answers, he kills him. But it's something that we've been waiting for, Harry's been waiting for, and he's just been allowed to go back into the city, kill, cleans up at his job and returns home, and his wife comes down in the morning and finds him holding their son. And it's just bizarre at that point, because surely there were grounds to arrest him, and it just doesn't happen. But because Leela, obviously being at home, new mother, she's very aware that Jamie isn't okay. She's worried for him and she's worried for their relationship. But Sonia actually takes it upon herself to use the information that Harry has given her, because they're forming a bit of a connection, an intimacy there. She uses that information and actually goes to Leela's shop and tells her everything that Harry has told her about Jamie and his behaviour.
Including the murder.
Well,
even though...
Do we know? We don't. Yeah, it's never proved that it's him at that point, but obviously Harry thinks it is and just says it. And Leela then kicks Jamie out because she's so scared for her and her child, and obviously who wouldn't be? Jamie's obviously infuriated by this because he thinks that Harry and him have this connection, like he and Nick did, this mental connection where they might have each other's backs, they might understand why they do the things they do. And instead he turns up at Ambrose's cabin, which is very secluded in the woods away from everyone else, and tries to provoke a fight with him in front of Eli, who is Harry's grandson. And he wants Harry to, he wants Harry to fight him. He wants, he just wants that connection, and he thinks that that's going to help. And he does later leave. But Jamie then goes on to stalk Harry and Sonia because he realises that they are dating. And I don't think he's necessarily infuriated by that, but now he can see that
I think
where the information's come from.
He feels betrayed by Harry because Harry recorded a confession that he'd made, and then Jamie at that point seeks out on a mission for revenge against Harry. He thinks, like you said, Jamie thinks that Harry and him have got this bond.
Well, so much so that they actually do the trust test.
Yeah, well, Harry's doing that to basically he wants to get a confession out of him.
And Jamie writes the confession, but says to Harry, if I bury you and I hold up my end of the bargain and uncover you, you burn the
Right,
confession.
let's just revisit that.
Which Harry agrees to.
You're a detective. You know this guy has done these crimes, he can't prove it.
Mm-hmm.
You've just got him to write a confession, signed.
Admitting to the murder.
Yep. Case closed.
No, not for Harry.
You arrest him there, and at that point, that's where it lost me then.
Yeah. So it's very bizarre. You see the end of the episode, Harry... It's a coin toss situation, so it could be that Jamie is buried by Harry, but of course it turns out that Harry is the one getting buried. The hose is in place. Jamie explains how the breathing tube works, and then pulls it at the last minute, and that's the end of...
So Harry's in the hole. They put boards above him first to give him a bit of an air pocket,
Yeah.
and then all the
And
6
soil.
feet of earth is chucked in on top of that.
Yeah.
And we realise that he's in there for
8 hours.
8 hours.
8 hours.
And he has all sorts of hallucinations. He thinks he's dying. He thinks Jamie's double-crossed him and he's leaving him there. His battery signal... Well, there is no signal on his phone.
No, the phone dies anyway.
And then he has all these hallucinations. It's some kind of cathartic near-death experience for him, and he comes out and he burns the confession, the written confession. It's in front of Jamie. He's almost grateful. He's quite emotional. He's thinking this has actually been quite an incredible experience, and Jamie's buzzing because he's got his kindred spirit and all of that.
Yeah.
But all the while that Harry's actually been recording their conversation.
Yeah, and the other thing Jamie refers to is that he said that when Nick was driving towards Sonia's house that night, Nick's intention was that Jamie should kill Sonia, and Jamie says that's why I caused the crash. I had to do it because I couldn't go that far. And Jamie later leaves, and we see Ambrose has recorded it all on his phone, and Jamie's arrested finally. And you think, okay, we might be getting somewhere, but unfortunately, Jamie's lawyer persuades a judge to rule the confession inadmissible, and so Jamie is released and is now out for revenge. He goes back home, and Harry Ambrose has told Leela to get a restraining order so that Jamie can't enter the home, which only angers Jamie more. But Harry thought that was a done deal, that he'd never have to deal with Jamie again. Jamie would be behind bars, and now he's out and he's free.
First thing he does is he goes after Harry Ambrose's colleague, his boss.
Is it his boss? Yes.
And he kills him on the golf course. Then he goes after Eli. He picks Eli up from school or somewhere on the way home. The way home from somewhere. At which point Harry Ambrose has been trying to get through to Eli's mum, Harry's daughter, and it has spoken to her, and they realise as they're talking that Eli is missing, and then he goes to Sonia's and he attempts to kill her, but
she tries to talk him down.
The police are nearby and they alert Jamie, and he takes off again, and he ends up back in Harry's house with Eli, because everyone's out looking for Eli.
Yeah.
But all the time they're back in Harry's house.
And he threatens to shoot Eli, but Harry says to him, "You're not going to do that. He's a kid. You're not going to do that."
And then blah 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 blah. Shoot.
Yeah, endless talking later. Eli escapes and runs off into the woods to get help. We never actually know where he is, do we? And Jamie taunts Harry to the point where Harry shoots him, even though Jamie wasn't actually going to attack him. And Jamie is now dying on the floor, and he's, apologetic. He regrets.
He's terrified. He doesn't want to die.
He's not a bad person,
pathetic.
And he doesn't want Harry to leave him. And Harry holds his hand as he dies, and he regrets what he's done. And Harry promises him, "You won't be alone," and holds his hand. And eventually, he dies.
It's all very emotional.
Didn't have to end like that though. Could have just been arrested, job done. But unfortunately,
no, because Jamie had got to experience all these things he'd.
Yes.
I think it was trying to make us feel some kind of empathy or sympathy for Jamie, to see him suffering and to see him scared at the end, and he'd very fiercely protective over his own son and his wife. I didn't buy it. I didn't feel sorry for him at all.
No.
I thought I didn't feel much for him at all as a character.
I can't say I did, because Jamie makes a lot of weird decisions throughout the series, including the way he talks to one of the students and tries to persuade her suddenly not to apply to college, and he wants her to take a less traditional route, the life of non-conformity, and gets himself very involved in that, much to the anger of her parents, and I just didn't really like him for that. But
Well,
the
I think
series is
I
good.
think we were supposed to think at one point he was going to kill her, the student, as well, but he didn't.
Oh no, he does meet up with her before he says he's leaving town for a while, because the school have seen him be arrested and his job's been in jeopardy for a while anyway because of the way he's been acting. So yeah, and the series ends with Harry and Sonia together, and Harry breaks down in tears because he's kind of traumatised by what happened, and I don't know how that's going to play into season 4. I don't know if we're going to see this relationship with him and Sonia. I don't know how affected he's going to be from this investigation and whether that will have any impact on season 4. But
I'll make a guess. I'll say that she won't be in it at all.
I'm guessing not. Standalone stories, and also his inability to hold down any form of relationship. Like even the relationship with his daughter's really strained, and he's isolated himself anyway.
But I'm curious because I think it's grown tired. I think season 1 and 2 superb, but they need a decent antagonist for him to come up against, and this season 3 wasn't that. Because season 2 was a young boy who'd killed his parents, as we thought. So that was, pretty. I like that. It was quite dark and unexpected, and especially after season 1, where a woman just brutally stabbed to death a complete stranger on a beach in broad daylight in front of her own family and tens of other witnesses. I thought, okay, I can get that. But this one was utterly ridiculous. I'll go back to that. It was it was several steps too far for me. But you liked it more than I did.
Yeah, I still liked it. I think it's a very good, I say series. The whole show is good. It wasn't my favourite season by any means. I think season 1 for me has always been the favourite because of how dark it was. I think this was still dark to a point, but in the previous 2 seasons, everything made sense, whereas in this season stuff just didn't make sense. When that stuff in New York happened, I couldn't understand how there were still episodes to go. I didn't know where they'd go from that, and it lost me a little bit. But I still really enjoyed it. I think it's a great standalone series, and I'd still recommend it for sure. But season 1 was my favourite season by far. I don't really know what else to say about it. We've gone through it. We've talked about the plot.
Certainly have gone through it.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point. No stone left unturned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Yeah, it's a bit different talking about one thing, but I think to talk about a season rather than just one film, you do need a bit more time anyway.
Yeah. It was good. Engaged for a period of time. I would recommend it. I'd say go back and start at the beginning. Watch season 1 if you haven't.
Yeah, if you haven't watched season 1.
Well, if you haven't watched season
3.
1, you shouldn't be listening to this.
No, this is true.
Which you probably aren't, in fairness.
No.
So, no. Okay, well, that's it.
Yeah.
Back next week for a return to regular formatting.
Yes.
Right, say goodbye, Jen.
Goodbye, Jen.
Ciao.